The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website.
Hello and welcome to Live and Learn. I'm Jerry Renaud. Today we're going to do part 2 of our series on scams and frauds. We're going to talk about some very specific types of frauds that are out there and how you can avoid them. Ryan Sothen from the Nebraska Attorney General's office is back with us. Stick around.
Hi everybody, welcome to Live and Learn. I'm Kim Hachia. On my segment today, we're going to be talking about a very interesting new app for your phone. It's called MyLink, and we're going to be talking about how that's a simple one-stop shop to help people find all sorts of social services and other things that are going on in Lincoln. Stay with me, I think you're going to want to see this.
When we think about microbes, like bacteria and viruses, it is generally after we have experienced their effects. I'm Kristen Stows, and my guest, Nancy Haberstich, will share a unique approach to infection prevention. I guarantee you will be entertained and engaged by what she has to tell us today.
Welcome to Live and Learn. I'm Lita Powell Drake. How long has it been since you've ridden on a train? That long? Then I think you'll want to watch Richard Schmeling tell us the history of trains. Please stay with us.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Hello and welcome to Live and Learn. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. On an earlier show, we had a very special guest who came in and talked to us about scams and frauds and ways that you can try to avoid some of those ways of somebody trying to come in and take your money, and we didn't quite finish it. So we have invited him back from the Nebraska Attorney General's office, the Consumer Protection Division. I think I got it right this time, Ryan
Indeed.
Sothen. Ryan, thanks so much for coming back and talking to us today.
Well, hello, Jerry. Thank you for having me back.
Just as sort of a brief reminder, let's talk about some of the ways that people should be thinking about protecting themselves, and sort of go through some of these things once again of what people should be doing to try to make sure they are not going to be the victim of this scam before we talk about some very specific kinds of areas. So let's talk about some of these things. The first one is originating the phone call. If you have to answer the phone, you should not be giving information.
Agreed. Now, if we consider fraud as reported by method of contact, 70% of these attempts now are coming in by telephone. Because of today's network architecture, it is so easy to spoof not only your telephone number, but your caller ID. And none of us can be certain that the entity, for example, that says they're calling from our government, whether it's the Social Security Administration, the IRS, Center for Medicare Studies, we cannot be sure, so we don't want to give out the information. Independently verify, call back on a separate number if you have to, but don't trust unduly that the party is who they say they are.
And it's happening on cell phones too. It's
It is
not just the
happening.
landlines.
Absolutely. In fact, more on cell phones now.
Okay. Government will always send a notice through the U.S. mail. They are not going to call you, correct?
That is correct. So be highly suspicious of anyone saying that they're the IRS, especially by phone. The IRS is going to reach out to you by phone, period.
And if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
I agree. That could be the tagline to the Consumer Protection Division. That
Yes.
hasn't changed since my grandparents told me that.
And the sense of urgency, that's one that we always get. It has to happen right now or something else is going to happen.
Urgency is always a red flag. It's a clear indicator of a scam in the making. Typically, there's an offer too good to be true or too compelling to ignore. Urgency is applied that the senior has to do something not now but right now. What is it they have to do? They have to make an immediate payment.
Yeah, so it has to involve money, right? If somebody is demanding money from you, be skeptical.
Be very skeptical.
Okay, and the person then wants some sort of identifying information, personal information. That should be a red flag.
It's definitely a red flag because if I can't steal from you now, I'll steal from you later. Through the personal identifying information that I obtain from you, I can perpetrate identity theft.
Okay, let's talk about some of these specific scams. The one that is probably, or at least the one we hear about the most, is identity theft. We have some videos that we'd like to play to help get us started on all of these, so let's play that video right now.
Okay.
You got money, I got a way to take it from you. Watch this. Dear valued customer, please verify your social security number, address, blah, 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 blah. Send. I go into her social network, find out her birth date, her hometown, and boom! I am Darla in Greenville. Easy peasy.
Visit the AARP Fraud Watch Network to learn how to protect yourself from identity theft, fraud, and this guy.
Sorry, Darla. Not really.
Isn't it frightening how easy it looks and how easy it seems for them to be able to do this and grab your identity?
It is frightening. 3 items in quick response. 1, this is showing the importance of what we call keeping a clean machine. If you're keeping personal identifying information on your computer, and who isn't,
Yes.
it is important to keep that operating system updated, as well as antivirus, anti-malware. Use a long and strong password to protect the information as well.
And maybe change that password?
I would say change that password approximately every 90 days. And then to prevent the likelihood of identity theft, there's something known as a security freeze, which puts you, the consumer, in charge of the release of the details of your credit report. The good news is that all charges associated with the security freeze, placing, lifting, now free here in Nebraska.
Okay, let's talk about one that seems, again, pretty commonplace. I would bet almost everyone has gotten some sort of phone call saying that they owe money to the IRS. Here's another little fun little video. I guess I shouldn't call them fun videos, but here's another example of how this could work.
The IRS.
He's coming for you.
Mrs. Roberts? Yes, this is George Hudson from the IRS. You play on their ignorance, right? You say you got interest penalties, you could lose your house, all that stuff.
It's
and they're
like a nightmare came knocking at their door.
Yes, you do owe, ma'am. Our records indicate that you do. Records don't lie. We need you to pay that today. All right, debit card it is. Yes, just give you the number, expiration date, and the security code on the back. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, people of America.
One that we certainly want people to be aware of. There's something about the IRS that scares people to death. And somebody calls and says they're from the IRS, everybody goes, whoa.
Well, this is the perfect example of the offer too compelling to ignore because of the negative consequence that is attached. As we discussed earlier, the IRS is not going to communicate with you by telephone. Also, if you have an outstanding past due debt, this is going to be a known debt. You're not learning of it first time by phone. The IRS also will never ask for payment over the phone, will never ask for a credit card number. However, consumers now need to be aware that the IRS is allowed to outsource a portion of its debt collection to third parties. There are 4 companies nationally that can do this. That information is available on our website and from our office, but they are CBE, Conserve, Performant, and Pioneer. So be aware that, again, you would know if your debt has been outsourced. Otherwise, you're never going to hear from a representative even of the IRS by phone.
So if somebody calls and says they're from the IRS or they're from a subsidiary company,
be skeptical and hang up.
Okay. Should they call back and check anything, or just that's enough, just let it go?
They can independently verify if it's one of these 4 companies. They can ask for verification of the debt in writing.
Okay. Here is one that I would bet everybody has gotten at some point in time, and that is something pops up on your computer as you are typing along, that all of a sudden there's some sort of virus or something that is going wrong. Let's take a quick look at this video and talk about this on the other side.
It starts with a pop-up window on your screen telling you you've got a problem. Or it's a phone call from a helpful technician saying you've been infected with a virus, or they've noticed your computer is running slow. They claim to know something is wrong with your computing device, and for a fee they can fix it if you'll just give them control of your computer. It's called the Microsoft Tech Support Scam, so named because the scammers often claim to be employees or partners of Microsoft. But they may tell you they work for other well-known tech companies too. It's a swindle that's growing fast.
If a consumer receives one of these fraudster calls, they can report it to Microsoft at www.support.microsoft.com/reportascam.
When this happens, when this pops up on your computer screen, and I guarantee you it has happened to almost everybody, what do you do?
Well, again, this is underlying the importance of keeping a clean machine, keeping your operating system and all antivirus, anti-malware up to date. But understand the threat. No one is monitoring your computer or your internet traffic, and the danger here is that they're going to remove a non-existent virus for a handsome fee, dupe you into paying for ongoing monthly monitoring and maintenance, and then also place malware on your machine, which will be designed to steal your personal information. So I would just find a way to abruptly hang up the phone and not take the bait.
And sometimes it pops up on your computer screen, and it's hard to get rid of. That there's something there that you need to do something right away. Should you clear out the cache, or should you do something?
If you can't click the X in the upper right-hand corner, then you'd probably be well served to hard reboot the machine, which is to restart the machine. And yes, then I would recommend clearing out both the memory and the cache if you know how to do that. Fairly simple procedure.
Okay, let's talk about one that is probably fairly new, at least in terms of maybe for seniors, and that is the romance scam. Let's take a look at this video and we'll talk about it.
I'm not dead, but I almost died last year. I was a victim of a romance scam by a man I met on eHarmony and lost over $1 million. My husband was, he became sick. He actually got brain cancer. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I fell for it.
Anyone could be a victim. Not only do these people get taken and separated from their money, oftentimes their entire life savings, they're also emotionally abused by these scammers.
Ryan, this is just tragic, that people are playing on the loneliness of people.
It's heartbreaking, and it is growing in terms of its popularity, largely because the stigma of moving into the online dating world is being reduced. In fact, the second fastest growing cohort is age 55 and above for finding love online. Recognize the signs, though, is that you'll work forever to come up with that successful profile. You'll put it out there, you'll get a very fast response, a wink, a message. You'll be encouraged to move offline quickly, share your email, perhaps your phone number. There'll be a fast confession of love and affection. You'll be moving towards this meeting. You'll be looking forward to the meeting because this person is telling you everything that you've longed to hear. And then just before that scheduled meeting, something's going to have come up. And that something, whatever it is going to be an obstacle overcome through what? Some form of immediate payment required.
Sure, right. Okay, I think we have time for one more, and this is again a pretty popular one, and this is where somebody calls and either impersonates a grandson or somebody that you know who is in trouble, and it's a lot of times it's grandparents who are getting schemed. Let's take a quick look at the video and we'll talk about it.
Yellow. I got a phone call saying, Grandpa, I've had an accident. I'm out here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I got picked up. I've been drinking. I says, Jeff, is this you? It don't sound like you.
If they say it doesn't sound like you can say, well, in the accident, I hit my nose or something. And first, you want to establish the trust again. You want to tell them to keep it between us. Send me $3,000 to $4,000. There was an accident. I can't get into details right now. I just want to let you know that I'm taking care of it. I got a good lawyer.
So I took it up, paid Western Union, sent it off.
This is another sad, tragic one. Sometimes these phone calls come in the middle of the night because it gives it sort of that more urgent sense.
Third most popular scam after calls from the IRS and Windows Tech Support. Quickly, I can say that the quickest way to debunk this before you're marching off to the bank to pay the fee that's going to rescue the grandchild, call your grandchild. Call them on their cell phone.
Yes, that's the perfect thing to make sure we call. Okay, so one quick, again, look at if somebody thinks they've been scammed in some fashion, we need to report it. So let's put some numbers up here on the screen of where people should call, where should they go to report this information.
We want all Nebraskans to know that they have a friend in the Attorney General's office. Please reach out to us directly by phone at 1-800-727-6432 or online at protectthegoodlife.nebraska.gov. You can fill out a complaint form or register a fraud or scam that you're concerned about. But please do let us hear from you, because underreporting is a serious problem. We're here to help stage the financial and emotional recovery to the degree that we can.
Ryan, thank you so much. This is such an important issue, and it's an ongoing one. Please come back and see us again sometime.
Thank you again for having me. Be delighted to return.
Thank you. And thank all of you for tuning in today to Live and Learn. And remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
Hi, I'm Randy Jones with Aging Partners. Did you know that Lincoln expects a 75% increase in the number of seniors living in our community over the next 15 years? Aging Partners is a community service that provides fitness programs to help keep older adults strong and healthy. This year, Lincoln Cares donations are providing funds for new fitness equipment. You can help make this happen. Sign up to support Lincoln Cares and add $1 to your LES bill each month.
Hi everybody, my name's Kim Hachia. Welcome to Live and Learn. It's really my pleasure today to welcome my guest Brian Seck, and we're going to talk about this really cool app project that's called MyLink, and it's a cool way for people to find information kind of at a one-stop shop situation on more than 400 social service nonprofit agencies in Lincoln. So thanks for coming, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Give me sort of an elevator description of MyLink, which I understand was originally supposed to be pronounced MyLNK.
Right. So it's called MyLink, and the LNK is from the airport code, but we really thought that was kind of a nice combination of this is your link to services. So in a previous life, I was the homeless outreach coordinator for Lincoln Public Schools, and there were 2 very large resource books that were printed, put together by DHHS and our friends at the Center for People in Need, and I carried these around everywhere working with families. And I always thought, like, if we could make this into an app, how cool would that be? So that's really where the idea came from.
And so then, how did it get to be an app?
Sure. So I had the privilege to be a part of Leadership Lincoln Fellows Class 32, which is obviously the best class ever. And for Leadership Lincoln, you do service projects. And so I have this wonderful group of 9 people, and we kicked around different ideas, and we landed on developing this app as our service project.
So what does the app do?
Sure. So what the app does is it's a directory of the 450 nonprofit organizations here in Lincoln. So I used to work with homeless families each and every day. And when I worked with a single mom who had run out of diapers, she maybe knew of 1 place to get diapers. In reality, there's about 6 places where she could get free diapers, and she didn't know that. So the way that the app works is that you can search by category. So if you click on category, it'll show you all the different types of services that families can need. Excuse me.
So we're doing that right now.
Right. So for example, if a woman is experiencing domestic violence, there's the domestic violence category. She can click on that, and it shows all the different organizations that work on domestic violence. So here you can see the Child Advocacy Center, which works with kids who are being physically or sexually abused. So she could learn about that service if that's something that's necessary. You can also see the demographic information. Then if you go back to the home button or click go back, now you're back at the front page, one more to go back. Personally, my favorite part is the calendar. So if you click on calendar, I used to work with families every day who were food insecure. These are families who maybe run out of food stamps by the end of the month. Maybe the kids who are part of this family, maybe they just get fed at school. However, in Lincoln, there is at least 15 different places to get free food 7 days a week. The challenge is sometimes families, seniors, veterans don't know where the food is. This takes care of that. So here's today, Friday, June 21st. It lists the free places to get medical care today. So if you scroll back to the top, you'll see that there's free dental services today over at the Mission, but there's also all of these places where you can get free food all over town. And if you swipe on the blue area, left to change the day. There's Saturday, you can swipe again. There's Sunday.
Wow,
so it's
that's
really
cool.
amazing that families, they don't have to worry about, do I have my directory? Do I have that piece of paper? If they have their phone, they know where they can get free food and free services.
And I know you and I chatted earlier that there's been about 8,000 downloads since February 2018.
So we released the app on February of 2018, thanks to our friends at Don't Panic Labs, which is a software development company right here in the Haymarket in Lincoln. And they developed the app using their high school and college interns, which is completely amazing. We've had about 8,000 downloads, and we're right in between 12 to 1,400 monthly users. So, a lot of times people download an app and never use it.
Right.
We know that people are very consistently using it, and it's really about 50-50. It's about 50% people who are case managers. A guy like me who used to work with homeless families, I'm using the app for families. And it's about 50% families in need who are utilizing the services. One really great thing about the app is that it's anonymous. So when we went around the community and we really asked all the nonprofits in our community, like, do we need this? Is this a service that would be useful for you? The domestic violence agencies really pointed out to us that this has to be anonymous. So if you're looking at the app, there's no account feature. There's no briansec@gmail MyLink account name.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are using this, it has no memory. As soon as you hit back or home, it's gone. And that's because if there's an abusive partner, he or she can't see what the other person's looking at.
That's really interesting. I find it interesting that you actually worked with the agencies rather than saying, we've done this thing for you.
Right.
It has become more of a, we have done this thing together.
Right.
And I think that probably has increased the buy-in. And where agencies, did they think, oh, great idea, but how much work is it for me?
Sure. So when we first started this project, the Department of Health and Human Services had their Community Response Guide, and the Center for People in Need had their Community Resource Handbook. Really what we did is we put those two together. So DHHS no longer updates their Community Response Handbook. This is the Community Response Handbook. For the Center for People in Need, when there is a request put in by the agencies to update their information, that request goes to the Center for People in Need. So this did not reinvent the wheel, this merged the wheel. So it's really exciting that this is not any new energy, it's not any new asks. In fact, agencies get asked less than they used to update their information. One great thing about the app, if there's any agencies who are watching this show today, is that if you click on Cedars there, and if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a button there that says Report Incorrect Data. So let's say I work for Cedars and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know what? We changed our hours, we changed our phone number. They don't have to worry about how do I get in contact, how do I change it? You click on that button, it fires up an email, and you can write the changes. That goes to the Center for People in Need and the app updates. A beautiful thing about the app is that once you download it under Wi-Fi or cellular service, like if you have Verizon, it's physically on your phone. Many families who are low income, they have a smartphone, but they really bought it from their cousin secondhand for $10. It's not actually connected to Wi-Fi or a cell tower because they don't pay for minutes.
Right.
Maybe they have prepaid minutes. So by having an app designed like this, they download the app at their child's school, they go back to their apartment where they don't have Wi-Fi or cell service, but everything on the app works. Whenever we have updates, the minute that person comes back under Wi-Fi or cell, it'll auto-update to all the changes that we've made.
Wow, that's really cool. Another thing that I find interesting is the number of partners that were involved in this. Talk a little bit, you talked about Don't Panic Labs, but how did you, why were they involved? They're a private company.
Right.
Why would they want to help you?
Right, so the app's intellectual property is owned by Leadership Lincoln.
Okay.
So I work on this project along with the 9 other members of my team who are accountants and architects and firefighters who we were all part of this community service group. Don't Panic Labs got involved. We reached out to them and we said, hey, would you be willing to help us work on this idea? Purely an idea. We're not software developers. And they turned out that they were looking for a summer project for their high school and summer intern program. So it was a wonderful fit. And so now some of those students who started in high school working on this project 2.5 years ago are now in college and are writing other apps. They're still working on this project. They're working with Don't Panic Labs. So these interns were supervised by project managers at Don't Panic Labs, in addition to Leadership Lincoln staff being involved in that. Also, Cause Collective, which is kind of like our Chamber of Commerce of nonprofits, has also been involved sharing information. The Center for People in Need is really the key component on the nonprofit side because they update all the information. Nothing happens without the Center for People in Need. Community Health Endowment provided us a small amount of money to do marketing. And also our friends at Department of Health and Human Services have been instrumental in sharing their original resource guide, but also sharing their insights on how they successfully gathered this information. The DHHS handbook is really important, the information in there, because that includes all of Lancaster County. The Center for People in Need book was mostly focused on Lincoln.
Okay.
So this way, when we combine those, we really have a county level resource.
Wow. I just, when I first heard about this project, at first I was like, well, why would we need this? But it just seems just so incredible to me. And I know that you told me that one of the biggest users of this kind of service, particularly this emergency thing, is older adults.
Correct.
And so that's pretty helpful that it's all kind of this one-stop shop for, you know, older adults, but just anybody to use. There's a search. We're going to search for Aging Partners because I think they might be, there they are.
Right.
So Aging Partners, which produces this show, is part of this activity. That's really cool.
And that's what's, I think, really exciting about this app is it's applicable for young people looking maybe for summer activities, but it's also applicable for adults and older citizens who are thinking, well, what resources are there out there for me?
Right.
And the nice thing about this is you can have it on your phone, you can have it right in front of you. You don't have to get on the phone or anything like that. So if you look at Aging Partners, there's 3 programs that are featured from Aging Partners. You have the cost-free confidential information for services, and you have several others. So when you click on the link there, it takes you to a description of those services. So if you're interested in their programs and services, say the family services piece, you read this information, you're like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. Now you can make the call or get on the website. So you really have a really good idea of what you're looking for before you make contact with an organization.
Right, that's super helpful. In real life, Brian, you work for the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development.
That's right.
So does this have any sort of intersection with what you do in real life, with what you do in your volunteer life?
Absolutely. So when you think about the app has a lot of information in there about housing, affordable housing, senior housing, youth, you name it, there's information in there. And in my world, thinking about workforce development, housing is where the jobs sleep. If we don't have adequate housing for families, they can't get to work and be successful the next day. If mom has 3 kids at home and her kids aren't getting fed, how can we expect her to be successful in the workplace and contribute to the economic development of our community? So when I think about MyLink, I think it holds up half the sky. Half the sky is the resources in our community for families to access, and half the sky is her income from working and growing her career. So by having both of those integrated on the workforce side and on the MyLink side, we're really able to help families access resources that already exist. A great example is Bryan Health. Bryan Health printed kind of like a little info card, a brochure, for all the people who come into the ER and are expressing a need for services. Bryan Health is handing them that card saying, download this app. It has all the information that you need. We'll take care of your medical needs, but services needs, it's all right here.
Right.
So it's a really powerful community service for agencies and organizations to share about what's already here.
Right. And I was also in Leadership Lincoln. I was in a class 10, so we were, an early best class ever.
Sure.
But it's great that Leadership Lincoln has had such an impact through this and through all the things that they do. So, Brian, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. I hope that people will explore MyLink. You can find it at your little app store that you
on
use.
Android or Apple?
On Android or Apple, and just download it. It's pretty seamless. Even I figured it out. And I like to remind my audience that it's never too late to live and learn.
Legal services are a part of the spectrum of senior services available through our 8 area agencies on aging. Attorneys can assist and educate seniors on consumer credit and debt collection issues, as well as help them plan ahead with advance directives. Attorneys can also help seniors with consumer fraud and financial exploitation concerns, and also guide them through government benefit issues. For more information, contact the Elder Access Line at 800-527-7249.
Infection prevention is paramount in our lives and health. I'm Kristen Stows, and I'm so pleased to have as my guest health educator Nancy Haberstich, who is on a mission to help create infection-free families. Nancy, I'm so glad to have you on Live and Learn.
Well, thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Let's talk about your background and how your interest in infection prevention took shape.
Well, you know, I'm a nurse, and I've been a nurse for almost 50 years now.
That's hard to believe.
I started out with lots of staff nurse positions in pediatrics and orthopedics, that type of thing, and I did some work as a clinical instructor with nursing students, so that's how I kind of tasted education and the potential there. But when I moved to Lincoln, I took a job at Lincoln General as the infection control nurse, which is kind of my defining nursing role.
Yes.
And I was there for 17 years.
Okay.
And then I moved on to do international consulting in that area of infection control and prevention. And so I spent time on 5 continents in 6 countries teaching about microbiology as it relates to infection prevention. But one thing I discovered, nobody likes to hear about infection, and nobody really cares a lot about microbiology until, you know, they need to.
Sure. That makes sense. So is that how you got your idea for your nanobugs then?
Yeah, you get tired of addressing audiences of 300 people in Japan and their eyes roll back in their head when you start talking about microbes.
But you actually used a different approach.
Yeah, and I decided, okay, let's use some scientifically designed microbes that are cartoon microbes, and I called them microbes with attitude.
Yes.
And so I used those as teaching tools to engage the audience, at least to get their curiosity going.
Yes, well, and it does. These are wonderful graphics. I love the fact that they are microbes with attitudes. I think that is just very, very characteristic of what they are. And we are going to look at 3 of your nanobugs and have you kind of describe their characteristics to us.
Well, one of the important things about the nanobugs is they must have scientific integrity. And so I tried to take what the microbe looks like under the microscope and fashion its appearance in the image that we chose.
Okay.
And so if it's a rod-shaped bacterium, then it will have a rod-shaped body. And if it's like a strep, where it's balls in a chain of balls, like you see here with strep pyogenes, then that helps people to remember and assimilate the morphology, as we call it. And you know, Jurassic Park and the paleontology, when I saw those movies, I didn't know about dinosaurs, but now if I say to somebody brontosaurus, you know that shape, or say pterodactyl, you know that shape. So I was trying to kind of copy that concept.
A picture is definitely worth 1,000 words, and I think it's a wonderful learning tool, particularly for this. And you have found that as well, I'm sure.
Well, so let's look at some samples. This first one is strep pyogenes, and it's the bacterium that causes strep throat.
Okay.
And so you can see it's a chain of balls, and then we added the attitude with the fire coming out of its mouth, and then each one of the nanobugs has a one-liner or a slogan, and so that one says, "You won't sing a note with me in your throat."
Very good.
So that combination helps you to really remember what that microbe is all about.
Sure. So, and I know that you have actually even developed a coloring book that I did see the other day, and it features your nanobugs. It introduces some new rules of the kitchen, and I have to say, as I was paging through it, I thought I better revisit what I'm doing in my own kitchen. So let's talk about a few of those rules. Hand washing, that is so important. Please give us a word on hand washing.
Well, and you know I'm going to tell you that
Yes,
it's important. And
yes.
if you watch all the cooking shows, you won't see them taking the time after cracking the eggs into the batter to go wash up. But it's important. And so as we edit that out of a show where you're learning about cooking, you're going to miss some of those things. So I really want to make that point that after handling raw meat, raw chicken, raw eggs, you should be stopping, washing, and hand sanitizer won't get it in that situation.
All right, that's a good point to make. So you have to do more than just wash your hands at the beginning of your food prep. It should be all during. Yes, I understand. And I do something all the time, and you're telling me, no, I should not be doing this. Don't wash chicken or raw eggs in the shell before you cook them. And why is that?
Well, that was kind of a new revelation for most of us, Kristen, so don't feel bad. They actually did studies where they took a fluorescing substance and they put it on the surface of a chicken or a turkey or whatever. And then as the cook was washing the chicken in the sink to get all that slimy stuff off. And then they turned a black light on, and you could see the fluorescing substance was deposited all over the sink, the countertops, the clothing of the person.
Oh my.
And so the idea is, don't wash the chicken. You won't accomplish really anything. You won't send salmonella all down the drain. So the idea is, take the chicken and put it immediately into the pan, get it in the oven up to temperature, and kill them, and you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, so we're actually doing more harm than good if we try to
spreading
wash.
it around.
Spreading it around. I know temperature is of utmost importance. We are going to put a graphic on screen for us to visualize because that makes it easier. Refrigerator management, a term that I had never heard before before you used it. What are the do's and don'ts in terms of our refrigerators? The temperatures they should be, even how we organize them, and how often should we be cleaning our refrigerators?
Well, there's no real hard and fast rules to how often to clean your refrigerator. My mother used to clean it once a week. When we cleaned it out, we went to the grocery store and then we washed the refrigerator. But we don't operate like that in households anymore. So it's based on the drips, the chicken juice drips, and separation of ready-to-eat foods from those that are raw.
Okay.
And it's also based on how much activity your refrigerator gets. If you've got lots of people opening that door and going through the contents, or if there's just one of you, or if you've got lots of raw foods and you're shopping every day and loading and unloading.
Sure. Okay.
Manage your refrigerator so things don't drip down on things that are not going to be cooked and achieve that temperature.
Sure.
And then you should also make sure that the temperature inside the refrigerator is appropriate.
Okay.
And so it's good to have a thermometer in there, and you should check to make sure that it's 40 degrees or less.
Okay. And I know a long time rule has changed. It used to be that we would leave our leftovers on the counter to cool before putting them into the refrigerator, and you're saying that is really not the way we should be doing it now.
No, go for it. That graphic shows that the temperature between 40 and 140 is what's called the danger zone. And I like to think of it as the playground for nanobugs,
there we
especially salmonella and Clostridium perfringens and E. coli 0157. And so they have the most fun at those temperatures. So you want to keep food out of that danger zone as much as possible. And you really only have 2 hours that you can spend in that time zone. So if you're doing a buffet table Or when you take the turkey out of the oven on Thanksgiving,
Sure.
you don't leave it for 10 hours on the counter. So the clock's ticking, and
Okay.
you should use that 2-hour limit. But that also includes the time before cooking and the time with leftovers
Which
and
we
that
don't
sort of
think
thing.
about.
So
Yeah.
you're trying to
Sure.
avoid 40 to 140.
Do you have a word on cooking thermometers? I know we should be using them for more than just our Thanksgiving turkey, which is usually when I get mine out.
No kidding. And there's so much technology right now with thermometers. There's digital, there's the conventional thermometers, there's those that you can leave in and those that you can take out to the grill and put in. One other thing that I learned not that long ago was that you insert the thermometer into a hamburger from the side or into a chicken breast, not like this, where you might go all the way through, and so you're not taking the temperature of the actual meat or the flesh that you're cooking.
So it's important how we place them. Yes.
And that you use it.
Yes.
It's a great
Yes.
gift to give mom.
Yes. I know.
Or to give your daughter.
We have to get it
It's
out of the drawer. Use of slow cookers. Again, this is something I use all the time. I love my slow cooker, but you're saying there's one recipe we really shouldn't be using in our slow cooker.
Well, I'm intrigued a bit by this slow cooker overnight oatmeal.
Okay.
It appealed to me until I got to thinking about that. And if you take raw oats, which might have Bacillus cereus, a pathogen, in them, then normally you put the oats in boiling water, no problem. But if you're going to go all night at a low temperature, and some of the slow cookers don't even tell you what the temperature
And
is.
that is bothersome.
And so you don't know if it's 100 degrees or if it's 160 degrees. So I just think we should evaluate things like that. And when I use my slow cooker, which I love too, I turn it up high to get things going.
Yes.
And then turn it back.
I do that as well. I do that as well. Nancy, let's make the point that not all bacteria is bad. What is your word on that?
Oh, one of the greatest assets that we have as human beings is the gut microbiome, as they say, or the human microbiome. And so there's bacteria and microbes that are beneficial to us. And actually, they compete with the bad guys or the pathogens.
Okay.
And so we want to promote those. And that's why we take probiotic supplements, why we eat fermented vegetables like sauerkraut, and that to get some competition going.
Okay.
And also to make up for the damage that's done with antibiotics. So think twice before you beg your doctor to give you an antibiotic for a viral infection, which it's not going to work for anyway. And so the more we take antibiotics, the more we disrupt the balance in our gut. And so you can set yourself
we can be
up
our
for
own worst enemy.
Yes, yes.
Nancy, there's so much more that we could talk about, but I'm afraid our time is drawing short here. We're going to display your website for our viewers to access. And while we are doing that, I would just like to have you tell us what your hopes and dreams are for these nanobugs.
Well, you know, in the public schools, there's the STEM initiative.
Yes.
Science, technology, engineering, and math. And we're promoting that kind of learning with students so they can see the technology that's matched to the why of the science behind it and why those inventions are important. And so that's the way we're being educated. We're educating our children, and I think that's what we should do as mature adults who miss that kind of education.
Yes.
And now the newest aspect of STEM education is to add an A for art.
Okay.
We found that when you introduce art to the student's mind in conjunction with all of the technology and the math, put it all together, you can do a lot for innovation. And so I'm hoping that the nanobugs can be the art that causes some innovation in technology and makes good use of the science. So I'm hopeful that the nanobugs will end up being to microbiology what Jurassic Park was to paleontology.
That's perfect. Perfect, Nancy. Thank you so much for being here. And we are now going to put on a clip showing one of your talented nanobugs in action. As we all remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
Making people sick is my game. I'm just a little virus, that is true, but that don't keep me from infecting you. I'm popular in almost every nation, in a very large part of the population.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. I'm here to warn you about telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Some of these scammers may say threatening things like you will be arrested if you don't make payments or provide personal information. Do not fall for these tricks. These calls are not from us. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you for information or money. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Never give the caller your personal information, like your Social Security number or bank account, or send money in any form, cash, gift cards, wire transfers, or prepaid debit cards. Report the call to our law enforcement arm, the Office of the Inspector General, at oig.ssa.gov. Share this information with your friends and family.
Hi, I'm Lita Powell Drake, and today we're going to look at old-fashioned trains. You'd just be amazed at the wonderful things that they have actually been for us. And the first train that arrived in Lincoln, Nebraska was in July 26th, 1870. Can you believe that? Oh, I'm sure some of our older people can remember. Well, I don't know if they're still with us here, but Richard Schmeling is here and he is the expert on trains, and we're going to talk to him, and this is going to be wonderful to find out what it was like in the old days of trains. Let's take a look now.
Ray's Ranch is just across the mountain range, but the train won't have to climb over it. The tracks are cut into the sides of the mountain. And sometimes the train goes through the mountain itself, through a tunnel. Or it rushes across rugged country, over bridges and trestles. Are you ready? Asked the Pullman conductor. Bob will get off at a small station where the train stops only for a moment, but he's all packed and ready. Come on, Bobby, here we are. The porter carries a step for passengers so that they can get off the high cars easily. And as he had promised Mr. Watson, the Pullman conductor sees Bobby off the train. Here's Uncle Ray shouting, "Hi there, cowboy." The long ride is over. Uncle Ray's Jeep is waiting. The train starts off again, and off goes Bob to the ranch, to new adventures with cowboys and horses. But the train goes on across more mountains, more valleys, across deserts.
Great memories. That Richard Schmeling is here, and he's an expert in training. How did you get interested in trains in the first place?
I grew up in a small town in south central Nebraska. That town had 4 Class 1 railroads and an industrial line. And I was restless as a small child, so my mother would put me in the car seat and we'd go down and we'd look at trains, and she soon found that I was absolutely enchanted with trains, and that became a regular routine ever after, and it's created a lifelong interest.
Well, what do you think made this the magic time, the golden age of the trains? When was that?
During the 1920s, the passenger trains were at their peak. We came out of World War I, and we were fairly prosperous. You've heard the expression, the Roaring '20s.
Oh, yes.
And during that period of time, the paved roads were not that good, the cars were not that reliable, and the way to go was by train. And of course, the railroads competed with each other, There were famous trains, the 20th Century Limited, run by the New York Central, the Broadway Limited, run by the Pennsylvania Railroad, and high-speed trains. And each railroad, of course, was trying to have the best, the biggest, the most wonderful to attract the passengers.
Do you remember that railroad crossing right down O Street in Lincoln, Nebraska, where the cars had to stop for the train? It was at 20th and O Street. Do you remember that?
Oh, I certainly do. And there we have.
There it is.
Yeah, there's a picture of it. We are standing in front of the Old Rock Island passenger station. We're looking southeast. And that particular area, the Rock Island came through in a different path than the other railroads in Lincoln. It came through the downtown area, and of course when there was a long freight train going through, it blocked a whole bunch of crossings. Notice the Rock Island Hotel is there.
Look at that.
And that particular crossing was particularly significant to me when I was in college in the late 50s and early 60s. I used to take a date down there, and about 9:15 in the evening, the eastbound Rocky Mountain Rocket would come through, and we'd watch the train come through.
The train come through. Well, when did that stop? When did they finally clear it open?
The Rock Island passenger trains, the Rocky Mountain Rockets, quit running during 1966. But yet the railroad continued to operate freight trains through that area until it entered bankruptcy and finally was shut down completely in 1980. And now the tracks are gone through downtown Lincoln, and there's still a few traces, but not many.
Well, tell us about the Burlington Train.
Well, the Burlington was an early arrival in Lincoln.
Now, this was the passenger train, right?
Yes, yes. And what we're seeing is we're seeing a view of what was the second Burlington Railroad passenger station in Lincoln. The first one was wooden and not nearly as big. But as the area population grew, we had more and more trains, and this is the second station in Lincoln. It has been replaced, and the third station is still intact, although Amtrak trains have a different station. And the Burlington station still houses offices on the second and third floor of Burlington Northern Santa Fe.
I just love the old trains. And I really loved it when the conductors took the tickets. Wasn't that, there's a charm to that too.
Well, yes, and the tickets were paper. And so what would happen is the conductor would go through the train and he would punch each paper ticket. And it was interesting that each conductor had a distinctive punch in his ticket punch. Some of them were the shape of a diamond, some were a four-leaf clover, some were the shape of a snake, some were the shape of a horse. And when the railroad auditor got those tickets, he could tell which conductor lifted that ticket by the design of the punch-out.
Well, actually, when did the railroad start upgrading things?
The railroads were forced to upgrade things in the 1930s. What had happened was we had a situation where we had the stock market crash of '29, we went into the Great Depression of the 30s, and the passenger ridership fell off. So the railroad said, we have to try something new to try to lure passengers back. And what you're seeing is a picture, or you saw a picture of the Southern Pacific Daylight engine, which was a semi-streamlined steam engine, and a very bright color scheme.
That's beautiful.
Bright passenger cars called the Daylight scheme. The other railroads had diesel engines. We started getting trains that were called the streamliners, and those trains were aluminum cars rather than steel cars. They were lightweight, they were very fast, and each railroad had a fleet of their own passenger trains. The Union Pacific had the streamliners, the Burlington had the Zephyrs, the Missouri Pacific had the Eagles, and these trains were promoted as a group. And Santa Fe had trains called the Chief, and there was the Chief, and there was the Super Chief, and there was the Scout, And I have a T-shirt on that shows one of those Santa Fe Streamliners going down the track.
Well, what I liked was the dining car. They got pretty fancy there.
The dining
Look
cars.
at that.
Oh my, yes. The dining cars were a way to distinguish one railroad from another, and the dining cars were absolutely fancy. You could get gourmet meals prepared by a five-star chef on those trains. The meals were prepared in the kitchen section of the train, served with white linen tablecloths, silverware. It was absolutely a wonderful experience to be able to dine on the train.
Well, what changed the popularity of the trains?
There were a number of factors that came into play. One of them was the fact that we started having more and better paved highways. And then the cars improved.
Of course, Henry Ford.
Yeah, Henry Ford, the Model T. And cars were getting more reliable and cheaper. And then we started having advances in the air age, so we had transcontinental airplanes. Then along came the interstate highway system, and that was a big blow to the passenger trains.
Well, what was the nail in the coffin for trains, really?
The nail in the coffin happened when some postmaster general decided that we'd have quicker mail service if we took the mail off the passenger trains and went to a sectional center type thing. And as we know, that has not worked well. Our first class mail, you could get overnight delivery between Lincoln and Alliance back then. Now it takes 2 and 3 days. So we've lost the passenger trains, but we haven't improved our mail service.
What did the trains do to try to get customers back?
The trains explored some rather innovative fares. Amtrak has purchased new equipment. The 2 trains that come through Lincoln are the California Zephyr trains. They have superliner equipment, which is very nice and very modern. And on the East Coast, there are some Viewliner cars. The Amtrak continues to have a very good trade in the Florida traffic from New York down to Florida. They run a number of trains, and those are well patronized.
Well, we even have a wonderful train at the Children's Zoo. And that little train is so charming as it chugs around.
The zoo train is a replica of a very early steam engine called the C.P. Huntington, which was an engine of the Central Pacific. And you can see the old cabbage smokestack and the trim, and all the old steam engines were very ornate. It's fun to have the Zoo Railroad, and for a number of years I was an engineer on the Zoo train.
Oh, and you didn't ride off the tracks, did you?
No,
right
my
there.
train stayed on the tracks.
Well, what's really actually happening here? Trains are still going, and you still ride the train in Lincoln, but it's in the middle of the night to catch the train.
That's right. The California Zephyrs come through. The westbound comes through about 20 minutes after 12. The eastbound's about 3:30 in the morning. Hopefully at some point in time we'll get a second pair of trains through Lincoln on Amtrak, which will run in the daytime. And then there's a possibility we're studying commuter rail between Lincoln and Omaha, and those trains would of course run in the daytime. So we've seen a sort of a revolution in rail passenger traffic throughout the United States. Nebraska's a little slower to catch on, but we're getting there.
Well, the freight trains are now considering taking, there are 2 engineers on the train, and they're considering only using 1. What's your attitude towards that?
Okay, not 2 engineers, an engineer and a conductor. We used to have 5-man railroad crews, we're down to 2. If we have just 1 person in the cab, my feeling is that it will be very unsafe. For about 10 years, I drove railroad crews for Burlington Northern Santa Fe on West O. I got to watch the operations. I got to know the railroaders. And you really need that 2-man crew, in my opinion, to safely operate the trains.
Well said, my dear. Richard Schmeling certainly, obviously, really knows what he's talking about with the wonderful trains. Our thanks to Richard Schmeling, and remember, it's never too late to live and learn about trains.